So let's get into some of the juicy parts with the invitations. So when we construct an invitation, it has kind of four elements to it. It tends to be pretty simple. It connects to some sort of basic element of the natural world or a theme from the setting or the environment that feels really appealing to you. So it might be a pattern, a texture, it might be about motion or stillness, it could be about water, earth, air, size. You might think about different descriptors. It's also sensory. We invite someone to connect that sense to whatever that simple element is. It might be your sense of touch, smell, taste, sight, sound. You might also use internal senses like breathing or temperature or noticing the taste of saliva in your mouth. I know that taste is an external sense, but it's also kind of internal at the same time. And we use phrases, invitational phrases that are open ended. So I wonder if, or maybe, or perhaps, or what if. And we do that to allow exploration to be open ended rather than goal or control oriented. So rather than telling someone, so I'll just give an example. I have some naturalist training as an environmental educator, and one of the things we typically do is we try to show people different types of plants and have them compare different patterns of a plant in order to identify what the plant name is. And that's a very goal oriented objective, and it's a great one because once you start learning how to identify different types of plants, you know which ones might be poisonous or which ones are threatened or endangered, which ones are really, really abundant. And that can help you in other kinds of settings. In forest bathing, though, while that might be something we want to learn, what we're doing here is we're actually encouraging a connection to this larger environment. And so we're actually pulling the goal out of it. And so instead of identifying a plant, I might say something like, I wonder what are all the different types of shapes of leaves I can see here in this, clearing around me. And so I'm no longer thinking about just one plant with a goal of identifying it. Instead, I'm pulling back and broadening out to encourage the eyes to wander from plant to plant to plant and look for different types of patterns and shapes and maybe even colors. And this really engages the senses. It helps the attention wander from place to place. And if you end up watching the science explanation, it actually helps with your building flexibility of attention. Here's an example that I'm going to give you. On the next slide, you can click on a link, and I'll also put it down below the notes in the course website. And when you're looking at the video come up. It's basically a minute long, and I'm just going to invite your eyes to watch the motion of that bubbling water and let your ears listen to the sound. And even though you're not directly experiencing that water one-on-one, you're just looking at a video of it, I'm just going to invite you to let your skin notice the temperature of the room you're in and let your nose inhale gently, noticing any scents. And if you want, you can feel into your mouth for any kind of taste. And as you just let your eyes watch the motion and your ears listen to the sound, if you want to play a little more with exploring that connection with that bubbling water, you can say, outside I see, and you fill in the blank, and inside I feel, and fill in the blank. And if it helps, you can also again record or just play back that little piece of audio while you're listening to the sound of the water bubbling. This is really just you starting to practice an invitation. That whole piece is an invitation. It has one simple element, which is the water and the motion of that water. It's sensory in that I invited you to look at it and listen to it. And then I encouraged you to kind of wonder a little bit about, outside you see something, and then inside you might feel something. And then I also encouraged you to wander. So you're nudging from one sense to another sense to another sense. And you wouldn't have to do that. You could just stay with only your eyes and just let your eyes wander to different parts of that image. But that's basically one complete invitation. And it doesn't have to be very long. So if you want to, after you've done that little practice, I'm just going to invite you to jot down any notes if you want. What did you notice? Or just say it out loud. You can type it in the comments down in the course website if it helps you to kind of reinforce something you're noticing here. That's kind of simple and sensory a little bit, although it has all of those elements. So now I'm going to talk a little bit more about wonder and wandering. And wandering is really just encouraging us. The mind has been heavily trained into analysis and categorizing and judging. And those types of skills that the brain has are wonderful because that's, you can do math problems with those. You can plan into the future and accomplish different objectives with those. The thing about it, though, is it's one type of capacity, and there's a whole lot of other capacities that are relatively underutilized that people have. And those other types of capacities that the mind has actually help calm the nervous system. So when your attention pans outward and you become much more in connection with this natural area, the portion of your mind that does all that categorizing turns down a little bit. And you get to listen to the nature that's around you and inside of you. And it just starts to feel a little bit different. The same is true when you're wandering a bit. So when you're wandering and you're in a discovery mindset and releasing agendas, this type of exploration also helps your nervous system ease up a little bit. And one of the things that can happen is that the animals and the beings around you also start to behave a little bit differently. And I have some theories about why that is, but I just invite you to see what you notice about bird songs, about animals, about how close they come and how they interact with you, like this squirrel. This was out on a mindfulness walk near the Willamette River in Portland. Here are a couple more statements that you can combine into one invitation. So I invite you to notice the air that is gently moving all around you. And it might be so subtle of a motion, you might really not notice it moving. You have to really think about and focus on it. And I wonder if you can find where your breath or the air moving through you feels most vibrant right now. Maybe it's your nose or your back. And I wonder if you can feel the difference in the air touching your skin between where you have fabric covering it and where you don't. And sometimes it might be helpful to close your eyes or lower them when you're noticing. In this invitation, I'm using some familiar language around air. I'm also connecting you to one element, one simple element, air, and through your senses, a couple of different senses, your nose and your sense of touch, and inviting you to wander with your experience in your use of your sense. Here are a few other wander invitation examples. They're really nudging you to kind of explore. And what I invite you to do is to read these aloud in an audio recorder, or you can print out the one simple slide and take them with you and try them. I just find that the audio recording is nice because I don't have to look at a sheet of paper and then look around me. The audio invitation, I can just listen to whatever the audio says and then follow the invitation, right? It's a type of support, a structured support. So I'll just read the one in the center, Joy of Tiny Things. So when you develop your own invitations, you can name them so that you can remember what they are. I invite you to wander and explore all the tiny things, perhaps smaller than your hand, If you feel called to do so, I wonder what 5 or 6 small items you would choose and how you would arrange them in a design that's pleasing to you. So this invitation is pretty short, and while you're out, if you were to use this invitation for, say, 15 minutes, you would just keep coming back to this invitation. So you'd start out wandering in your landscape, looking for small things, the tiniest things that are less than a hand. And your eyes might, hop from item to item to item. And then your mind might start to talk, right? So then you can start gathering 1 or 2 little items that are safe to pick up and start creating some type of natural design. Maybe it's a spiral or a sun or an abstract piece of art, and arrange them on the ground with those different items. And each time your mind starts to chatter or move in another direction, you just come right back to that same invitation as a focusing point. I'm going to record an audio file of that what's in motion practice. This invitation here at the very top is one that we really recommend as one of the very first invitations you do when you're out on a forest bathing walk, because it's so easy to, and frankly kind of delightful to start noticing what is in motion. What do I see when I'm standing here? And what happens if I start to be in motion? What happens if I start to move? Can I notice something really close to me? Can I notice something closest to the ground that's moving? Can I notice something really far away or up vertically that's in motion? And how many different types of motion can my eyes find? So that type of practice is really wonderful. And this one's also really great with kids to try out. I'll record that and put that audio file underneath as part of the presentations. One of the other applied practices that I recommend is, if you haven't already listened to it, is to click on A Forest Walk of Faith from Kimberly Ruffin. That's in Emergence Magazine. Miss Ruffin is also an ANFT certified guide in the Chicago area, just like Irene is certified by the same organization. And you can plan to be outside in a park, in a yard, or if there's a favorite outdoor place you like to go, and just listen to her guiding you through a 45-minute walk in a park. And what you might notice is her invitations might sound different from some of the invitations you might hear on one of our walks, and there will also be likely some similarities, especially the what's in motion invitation. It's a favorite. So I'm going to invite you to try to design one of your own invitations. I'm going to give you an image on the next slide. And I'm just going to invite you to, off the top of your head, look at that image and think about, if you were there, what would you invite me or some other friend to do? What would you want that person to explore that's really simple? And it might be motion, texture, patterns, colored size, whatever it might be. And what sense would you want us to explore and notice? And what kind of statements would you use to invite us to be exploring? And what kind of wandering practice would you invite us to try out? So here's the image, and I just invite you to pause the video here and think through, okay, I'm on the bank of this beautiful river. What would I want to explore? What's a simple invitation I could give to help connect with this natural place? And you can jot it down, you can say it in an audio file, and if you're going to come on a walk with us, you can write it on an index card, and then you can offer it. There will be a moment, at least when I lead one of the walks, I'll take out a few different index cards and offer them out, and people can exchange an invitation that they developed if they'd like to, or they can just pick one from the stack. So it's kind of like choose your own invitation adventure. I just invite you to try this with different scenes or different landscapes. You can do this in your own backyard and practice this a little bit to get a sense of how this works. And again, There are also other forest bathing guides you can pay to go on a virtual walk with one of them. I have a virtual walk up on my website so that you can listen to a lot of different types of guides. And I will link to the ANFT website if you want to see more. And you don't have to be in the same physical location to go on a virtual guided forest bathing walk with one of those guides. And then you can start to hear different types of flow and different invitations and how people use them. This is a continuation of the invitation earlier to try different things, where I'm giving you a couple of little prompts. When I went out on my yard the other day to try to do the same type of homework, I just looked at my lawn and I thought, okay, it's just a lawn. But one of the cool things about forest bathing is inviting you to re-experience that living landscape differently. I wondered what the grass would invite us to do, and I started looking across the grass and noticing the different textures, and I wondered about what it would be like if I were to ask the grass permission to sit there. Like where would the grass invite me to sit? And then I just kind of played with what my mind generated in this relationship with the lawn in my backyard. And you can do this with any sense or any type of element in your landscape. So when you get to the end of your series of different invitations, it's really common for forest bathing guides to offer some type of transition out of the forest bathing experience back into kind of our everyday world. And we often do this through some type of connecting practice. A lot of people will bring a pot of tea, and they may use plants that they have collected on that walk that they know are safe for everybody to consume. Or they will have harvested something from their own yard, like I grow peppermint in my yard, so that's a really easy thing for me to gather and dry and then make some peppermint tea if I were to go out on a walk. But you can also, it doesn't have to be this type of structure. You can also build something together. So in that invitation where people were invited to gather different tiny things and arrange them in some kind of structure that's pleasing to you, you can invite people to think about one thing they would like to take with them from the experience that's not physical, just like something about the experience that they're going to take home with them. And then invite people to create a circle as a type of marking ceremony where everybody contributes one item. And when they contribute that item, they might do it silently, they might do it with a gesture, they might give some sort of verbal thanks out loud, either to the item, to the land, to us, and then place it in some sort of arrangement. Maybe it is that you build a tree together out of different found objects, and you leave all the objects there. In that type of an example, you wouldn't be picking anything. You would simply be gathering items that have already fallen that are safe to touch. Here's an example of if you were, one of my friends gathered some nettle and gave me some dried nettles. I was making a little tea ceremony in my lawn when I was exploring making some invitations with the grass. And then we close out our forest bathing experience with a closing threshold. And if you marked the very beginning in some way, you would also maybe mark it with a gesture or an intention, or you have some sort of invitation for yourself. One thing that I like to do as an intention when I'm starting a walk is I pick up a rock and I ask a rock to hold some sort of worry that I've been carrying. And then sometimes I'll carry it for the whole walk, and then I'll leave the rock at the edge of where I entered that space, leaving some aspect of that walk with the rock. The rock's pretty strong. It can handle my worry. So that's an example of a type of closing threshold that's ceremonial. And in this closing threshold, what we're doing is we're doing some reciprocity and some gifting. And part of the gifting here is simply that we're saying thanks. And it's a little bit, for me, it's a little humbling to think about how I would really deeply say thanks for the air that I get to breathe every day, the water that rains down every day on the land. It's just amazing that we get to be here, we get to be alive, and we get to be supported in such an amazing way from the land around us all the time, in the more than human world, and all the beings that are here. This slide is a little bit of a repeat from what I just explained as an alternative to using a tea ceremony. And you will probably have other things that occur to you the more that you start exploring and experiencing what it means to be in connection with our more than human world. If you'd like to explore further, here are a series of different books that are really useful for thinking about forest bathing and our connection to our natural systems. And in summary, we went over some of the senses here today in the optimal flow, and some of the structure elements of an invitation. And I helped you walk through a couple of different invitations so you can start to feel that mindfulness practice through using our senses. So I just want to say thank you for exploring your nature outside, and I look forward to meeting you and seeing you out in the forest.